What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about Dragon Soul. This raid is considered by many to be one of the worst put out by Blizzard, and easily the worst final raid of an expansion. We're going to look at what went wrong and some of the ideas I had for making it better. I'm not going to dig too deep into boss mechanics and things of that nature. It should be noted that this raid was likely hindered by the fact that it was the first to be dropped after Blizzard implemented the Raid Finder tool. I'm sure they held back a bit on the difficulty due to the enormous amount of players who'd be experiencing a raid for the first time. My main focus in this video is going to be the design and lore of the raid. One of the biggest complaints about Dragon Soul was the reuse of boss models and settings. The reuse of assets was prevalent throughout Cataclysm, as Blizzard invested a ton of time and energy into revamping Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms. This was most obvious in Dragon Soul. The setting of the raid was the Wyrmrest Temple in Dragonblight. This was of course a zone from the previous expansion Wrath of the Lich King. I know a lot of people didn't like the setting, but I was okay with it. The temple is one of the most sacred holdings of the dragons, so what better spot for a raid that is the culmination of a war between the dragonflights? And yeah, we don't want Blizzard getting lazy and reusing assets and settings just to save time and money, but I'm totally fine with them reusing a location if it fits the story. Blizzard has built a massive world filled with incredible lore. They shouldn't let it go to waste and just ignore a zone because it's old content. Though the setting is fine, our pathway through it really wasn't. You fight your way into the tower and then immediately fly back and forth to different boss fights before ascending to the top. It felt a little bit clunky. I think Blizzard should have redesigned the rather boring inside and had us ascend the tower that way, fighting bosses as we go. This was a good opportunity to bring some life to Wyrmrest Temple. A location of such importance should be a little bit more detailed. A dragon-themed tower would have been an excellent setting for a Deathwing raid. I would have cut the trip to the Nexus to retrieve the Focusing Iris. Like the previous two jaunts away from the tower, it just felt clunky and discombobulated. That mission should have gotten its own 5-man dungeon or simply been a quest prior to the raid. It would have fit in nicely with the 3 5-man dungeons Blizzard released setting up Dragon Soul. Those 3 dungeons, the End Time, the Well of Eternity, and the Hour of Twilight, were some of Blizzard's best storytelling in my opinion. I thought the Ship Chase, Spine of Deathwing, and Maelstrom settings were great closure to the raid. It felt pretty epic to me. I wouldn't change much with that. Alright, so that sets the table. We storm this ancient dragon citadel that has been besieged by the Black and Twilight dragons and their old god comrades. So now, let's talk about the bosses. The first 4 bosses of Dragon Soul were largely forgettable. We start with a giant rock elemental, 2 old god minions, and close with an orc. Morchok was particularly egregious after all we did in Deepholm gaining the allegiance of Therazane. We spent a whole zone knee-deep in rocks to get these dudes on our side. We shouldn't be facing one in the final raid of the expansion. Get him out of there. The only keeper of the bunch in my opinion was Warlord Zanaz. I would have him guarding the entrance to the temple with an army of faceless ones and other old god minions as the trash mobs. This guy was super imposing. He looked like an actual raid boss. Instead of being inside the belly of some old god monstrosity, he would be out in the field in a similar position to Morchok. Legions of old god minions would be out in front of him that we would have to contend with. This should have been an epic confrontation similar to what the Titanforged faced when they beat the old gods in ancient history. After Zanaz, I would add a twist. The second boss would be Deathwing himself. One thing I really thought was missing from Dragon Soul was a battle with Deathwing in his dragon form. In my opinion, his dragon form is one of the coolest models in the game. The fact that we didn't get to fight that was a bit disappointing. We obviously wouldn't kill him here, but we managed to slip by him and enter the temple through the lower chamber where the sanctums are. Perhaps the aspects create a distraction that allows us to escape. In this lower chamber, we would face off against members of the Chromatic Dragonflight. These dragons were originally created by Deathwing's son Nefarian. You may remember them from Blackwing Lair. Most of them were failures with the exception of Chromatus, who would be the next boss. Chromatus is a large 5-headed dragon featured in the book Twilight of the Aspects. He has the power of all 5 dragonflights. He was defeated and imprisoned in the book, but not killed. It would be up to the players to finish the job before moving up the tower. After defeating Chromatus, we would begin to ascend the tower. The mobs inside would be Draconids, which are the humanoid dragons we've encountered many times in the past. For a raid called Dragon Soul, encounters with actual dragons were not that common in the instance. As you ascend the tower, and fight off draconids, you'd be dealing with drakes breaking into the tower as you ascend it. The next boss would be a draconid of the Black Dragonflight guarding the escape to the top of the tower. Think Broodlord Lashlayer on steroids. Once we've reached the summit, we would jump right into Altraxion. You'd go through the waves of Twilight Dragons just like in the original raid before starting the Altraxion encounter. I thought this part of the raid was fine, I just didn't care for the little Nexus side trip. After defeating Altraxion, you will have gone through the Chromatic, Black, and Twilight Dragonflights. This wraps up a story that extends all the way back to Vanilla WoW. Onyxia, Nefarian, and Blackwing Lair are all key to the Black Dragonflight storyline, and they were iconic components of the original game. The only thing left to do is confront Deathwing himself. I'd keep everything the same as the original Dragon Soul going forward, except for the next boss. Warmaster Blackhorn was another bland choice I would replace. Instead of a singular boss, I would have a gauntlet-style event to replace Blackhorn. Deathwing would summon the last of his minions to try and escape. This would include dragons in the sky and draconids landing on the decks. After running the gauntlet, the finale of the raid would play out just like it did in the original. While it remains a massive pain in the ass to this day, Spine of Deathwing was an interesting fight, especially in the context of the story. Prying off the Elementium plate so Thrall can finish him off with the Dragon Soul was pretty cool. The madness of Deathwing encounter was a fitting end for a dragon driven mad by the old gods. The only other thing I would change is the cop-out in the end where the dragon aspects lose their powers. The idea that their mission was accomplished is absolute nonsense. At this time, N'Zoth was still at large, not to mention the Burning Legion. If you want to write them out of the story for a time, just say they were greatly weakened by giving the power to the Dragon Soul and need time to recharge. Completely depowering them was a bad choice in my opinion. That about sums up the changes I'd like to see in Dragon Soul, but I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments what changes you would have made to this underwhelming raid. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you want to see more of my content, please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.